Optimization was, and I argue still is, it's supposed to be a concurrent task with innovation. It's not supposed to be an afterthought. There's FinOps in action, and there's FinOps in action.
Welcome to FinOps in Action. I'm your host, Alon Arvatz. Each week, I'll sit down with FinOps experts to explore the toughest challenges between FinOps and engineering. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action. Hello, everyone, and welcome to FinOps in Action. And today, I'm really excited to have a very special guest. Our guest today actually worked with multiple C-suites at Fortune 500 companies and steered 300 million plus cloud programs. And until today, he still manages one of the biggest cloud spends out there. Fun fact, he was the first hire of AWS for cloud cost optimization. So we have a real OG today here with us. I'm happy to welcome Cloud FinOps Delivery Leader at Cisco, Jarred Clore. Jarred, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic, Alon. Thanks for asking.
That's great. And like we said, you're a real OG. You've been in this space for quite a while. So please share with us what is the one thing you got wrong when you started your FinOps career.
Yeah, hey, sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, I am an OG. I have the scars to prove it. But let me answer that question by giving just a little bit more background about myself. So I was sort of thrown into the deep end of what at the time it wasn't even called FinOps, it was just called cost optimization. And it seems like a lot of practitioners are thrown into the deep end. But I started, as you mentioned, doing cost optimization at AWS as an employee. That was my first exposure. I came from a background in consulting, so it was natural for me to be very matter of fact with customers, and I had that consulting mindset. I mean, I'm going in, I'm trying to save companies money, right? I'm trying to make the people I'm speaking to look good to their leadership, right? Um, but I'd often be met with, or I'd often meet with customers who were very attrition risk. They were hostile customers. They were promised big savings by migrating to the cloud, but they weren't really seeing it. They weren't seeing those savings. And some were just following trends of the time and were shocked at the sticker price. I mean, this was a time when cloud was really, just the hot thing to do. It was really gaining traction. This is like 2016, 2017, 2018, yeah, about 2016 and 2019-ish. Some had formal business cases that justified their migration, but there was just a gap that was on paper between what was on paper and the reality of the situation. And so they moved to cloud with really good intentions. But now they were in the hot seat, pointing their finger at AWS, and they're saying, hey, AWS lied to us. We're not saving money. And heck, I remember being screamed at by one customer. It was the first time I think I almost cried on the job. It was pretty bad. But as many already probably know this, AWS didn't lie about the value of the cloud. And the customer is just familiar with on-prem spending patterns and behaviors, and they weren't, familiar with how to optimize costs. So off I go onto a customer, and I'm, preaching the gospel of what was just simply called cost optimization back then, trying to calm them down, trying to turn, bend that cost curve, and building them a plan that was sustainable for, to keep the costs not so scary. And then I would walk away, hope for the best. And hoping for the best was probably the best I ever got. I'd follow up with the customer, often in person. Like I'd fly out to them. I would, have the cost consultation initially. I'd do a follow up, 30, 60, 90 days later. It just depends on the complexity. And I'd spend hours training them and showing them potential savings. And then I'd see little to no change, which in fact, sometimes I'd actually see it even worse. The phrase I said often was, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that was so true. I could not believe the lack of change. And so it took quite a while for me to see that trend. And once I spotted it, it took even longer for me to really figure out that it was cultural. It was something I wasn't familiar with. In my consulting background, we were hired to to solve a problem, and they were on board because they paid a lot of money for us to solve a problem. With this cost consultation, if you will, that wasn't the case. They weren't paying for my help. I was just part of the package. I was there to help save them from their own peril. And I realized what was missing was the executive sponsorship. Um, that was the big thing. I could, teach all the engineers how to do the right stuff, but I wasn't focusing on top down sponsorship. They knew there was a problem, but it wasn't, something that was on the radar or mandated to them. This was a time when efficiency was stepping aside for innovation. So adopting this amazing new thing called cloud to remain competitive, spend, 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 innovate. That was the idea. Just spend, 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 and get on cloud. That's what all the cool kids are doing. And that's how we remain competitive in our market. They thought that was the path to innovation. And, so when I didn't have executive sponsorship to innovate efficiently or to cost optimize, I essentially built an optimization plan with the customer that was a when we get to it kind of activity. And that was really challenging. They looked at it as a afterthought. And um, optimization was, and I argue still is, it's supposed to be a concurrent task with innovation. It's not supposed to be an afterthought. And kind of giving a long-winded answer right out the gate, but I think this is really important because it really ties into some of the current trends we're seeing. If you want to think of a more, current context of this very problem, showing itself again, think about AI spending. Spend, 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 innovate. And then all of a sudden someone says, hey, wait, what are we getting for all this spend? And it's deja vu for me. So I'm kind of seeing those real big rock problems reinvent themselves, come back to me and say, hey, let's find the business value. Let's get top down executive sponsorship early so that we can make this a effort that we're tracking in real time and not an afterthought.
No, that's awesome, and there is so much in there. And I'm still stuck with this customer yelling at you. Oh my God, that's terrible. Like I tell you, I can't forget one call I had in previous startup when I knew a customer is really mad at us. And I remember like getting on this call, taking a deep breath, and then going through it. It was terrible. And he didn't yell at me. So I can just imagine how it was like. But I actually want to go back to your experience of trying to drive action and drive change and seeing that it's unsuccessful. And I'm curious if that is what led you to move from a consultant point of view to a practitioner that actually drive change internally within the organization.
It's a good question. I kind of I was the what's the expression? Those who can't do teach. Um, I sort of felt that, but I knew I could do it. I had encountered so many common and niche scenarios that I felt, I really have something to contribute to the private industry, and so I wanted to go and be that guy. And really, the proof is in the pudding. You can never you can never anticipate all of those challenges, but when you've seen as many as I had seen, I felt very confident that I could hit the ground running. And so it was actually a really logical transition to, uh, especially to take that role at Cisco, because Cisco was my customer in my previous role. And so it was like, hey, I already know a lot about the background of this customer. I see the challenges they're facing. I would love to help, help them take action further by really rolling up my sleeves and dedicating myself to that effort.
Yes, I hope Cisco weren't the ones yelling at you.
No, no, they certainly weren't. I would love to tell you which customer it was, but there's probably some kind of disclosure problem. Plus, I don't know. I don't want to get PTSD just thinking about it too much.
No need, no need. But sounds like you took it to the extreme, like from consultant to going into probably one of the largest scale cloud environments out there. How is it like driving FinOps in the scale of Cisco?
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, there's never. You think of a use case, there's probably a one I can find in Cisco. It's kind of the culmination of all things I've seen, and then some. But overall, it is a really good question because I can kind of like walk through where I entered the Cisco space versus, what I know from the history. When Cisco started its cloud journey, it was thought that every business unit would manage their cloud costs. I mean, this is a company of companies, so this is a very complex organization. Since no one knew the workloads in the business units better than the business units themselves, they were left unchecked and unchallenged to optimize anything initially. But eventually, that hits a groundswell, and we realized that we needed to take a two-pronged approach. That top-down executive sponsorship that I had mentioned earlier was definitely missing, and that wasn't just like an IT, like a CFO, or I'm sorry, CIO. That was actually like leaders across all of the individual business units needed to get on board, because each of them controlled their own domain. And but then there was also the bottom up advocates that were so important for us, because it was one of those things where they could evangelize their FinOps successes, or sometimes their lessons learned, but they were able to really show, hey, we didn't take this seriously, and now that we have, look how we've cut our costs, and no change of the business other than increased profitability. And that was like those real stories that happen within Cisco, or what kind of motivates other business units to go want to try to do the same. And so that kind of helped us evolve our hub and spoke model of centralized FinOps. I sit in IT, which is focused on serving the business. That's our goal. So while we provided the right information to the right people across the business, we also turned our attention to tasks that provided, pan Cisco value across all of Cisco. And I think the best example of that is rate optimization. That was a big one for us. And in our spend volume and our scale in specific services, rate optimization has come probably to the forefront as being the largest savings potential we have. And it's where I focused a lot of my time. And these were just topics that were just not thought of whenever you distribute it out and have everyone manage things individually.
Yeah, interesting. And lately, I saw a post on LinkedIn where he said that you first need to do usage optimization, and when you know you're optimized, move to rate optimization. I wonder what you think about it and if it's realistic in Cisco scale.
I mean, that's yes and no. So on an individual business unit, that might work. If you can get down to the workload level, that's even more attainable. But there's an opportunity cost to inaction. And so I always say, it's not it's not an or conversation. It can be an and conversation. You should be looking at optimizing your usage while simultaneously working on rate optimization. It's just what parts of that does that mean? And what I mean by that is, there are big rock items like working on your EDP or your PPA with your provider, your enterprise cloud agreement, whichever provider you have. Um, there's that type of rate optimization, but there's also commitments. And that's probably where a lot of people are making or putting a lot of time and focus into. You shouldn't just be going and buying some gigantic commitment and calling it a day. What I would recommend people be doing is working up on incremental commitment purchases to get to the watermark that they are comfortable with, while simultaneously working their way down on usage optimization and making sure that that becomes more efficient over time. And it's a bit of a balancing act, but it's one where I think you'll find the realistic savings watermark where they meet in the middle somewhere, and you don't end up actually overcommitting and sinking your unit costs into a static number.
Yeah. And would you recommend, question that I've been thinking about a lot lately, would you recommend doing usage optimization in a place where it won't impact the near-term cost because of commitments that were already purchased? Or you would say, hey, no, don't deal with that. When the commitment will be over, we can look at it again.
That's a great question. And this is probably, I don't think there's a wrong answer to this one, but I would say in my take, if it can be optimized, optimize it, because that will, if you have the cycles to do that and you are capable, go for it. If you've got other business value driving work that you can achieve in lieu of that, go pursue that instead. But the reason why I'm always telling people optimize wherever you can is one, it's a cultural shift, and that's kind of like a muscle that the more you kind of hone in on, and you get that muscle memory, it'll stick. So that when that contract or that commitment does come time for renewal, you know where you really stand. But also because of the fact that um, if it's not now, it becomes a conversation of when. And I've seen folks where they have a big focus on optimizing their environment or security. Like there'll be a moment where they really, build a campaign around something, and if it doesn't land right then, it's okay. Well, we moved on to something else. And so I definitely want to get that down to even if there is no potential savings, it still means hey, we're operating more efficiently come that day. Also, it can lead to growth in other areas. It may not individually help the P&L of that specific business unit, but by being able to cut their costs, there might be some expansion, or there might be a data center shutdown, or there might be an acquisition. There's always ways to increase the cost somewhere else. And that often happens in an enterprise environment.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure there is always opportunities to increase your cost. And I have to agree with you. And it goes back to what you said in the beginning, where you saw companies not taking action and saying, hey, in the end, if it's a matter of culture, so if it's a culture, it's a culture. So it's beyond the bottom line influence, it's the long-term influence of the culture itself. So I have to agree.
Yeah, there's FinOps in action, and there's FinOps in action.
That's true. Exactly, exactly. I'm going to endorse that. And if we're talking, sounds like you went from a place where it was completely distributed to a place where things are more centralized within IT, within FinOps. Um, it's obviously, the right thing for rate optimization. I wonder if, like, for user optimization, you follow the same principles of centralizing it, or you had a different model.
We want to get there, but at our scale, we can keep tabs on the usage, but optimizing it's just complex due to the unique needs of every business unit and team within them. And so we definitely identified the potential, and we notified the users. So I guess in a way, we're managing the notifications, the reporting, the visibility centrally, but we're not taking action on it centrally. And the thinking there was that we just need to ensure that we have established trust with our users and matured our practice before we really start increasing our risk appetite. Historically, we've been risk adverse, but there's definitely interest in uh, beginning to be more, you know, centralized in those usage optimization tasks. We'll start in lower environments one day, and then we'll hopefully get to that production environment once we drive some real proof and build some confidence across our business units.
Interesting. So how does it work today? Do you like automatically shut down resources? How do you go about it?
And not necessarily. So ideally, we provide enough notifications that no one is surprised, like a very ITIL controlled shop. We'll be letting them know weeks, days, hours, numerous notifications so that there's plenty of notifications before execution. But if they want to like manage that optimization experience, they can opt out of that at any time. Just give us business justification why no is an answer, and you don't want us to touch this, you don't automate this, and we'll leave you alone. We'll hit the snooze button. We'll revisit this, in a certain amount of time. Um, but the other thing we also, and this is what we probably really encourage more than us taking the action on their behalf, is if they want to perform the optimizations that they can control the outcome, fantastic. Please go ahead. We would love it if our notifications drove their action as opposed to us automating it away for them.
Interesting. But if they got all notifications, they did not opt out, you would shut it down from the centralized team.
That would be the goal. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It'd be numerous notifications, numerous alarms, like saying, "Hey, this is going to happen on this date if you don't take action." And that way, if we do cause an issue, we can at least fall back on, "Hey, you were notified numerous times," and that way, we kind of save face in that.
But I would also guess that in your scale, at least, not all. Also, it's a company that has like many years behind it. I would guess there are resources that it's also would be hard to find the owner. Is that a situation that happens, and how do you deal with it?
We're actually really good at that. We've got a really, really mature allocation model. There was a large focus on that. At the very minimum, we have the owner for the account and where the activity is occurring. But down to the resource level, that might be a little bit more challenging. But the account owner is responsible for all of that spend. So, and that's sometimes a distribution list. So I have numerous people I can choose from. But ultimately, it's easier for me to find that resource. Um, the more challenging thing, or I would say the part that gives me a little bit of heartburn, is now that I've been working with Cisco for so long, I know these workloads. I know which ones are very sensitive. So even when I know that there is an opportunity, I'll see the workload and I'm thinking, oh, I would hate to cause an impact to this. So I will go above and beyond just the standard notifications, and I will start pinging them in WebEx and saying, "Hey, I really don't want to do this. Like, please, let us like talk about this. Do you really want to opt out?" Like, I'm actually encouraging them maybe to opt out because even I know their risk appetite on this one isn't probably going to be worthwhile.
Wow, that's interesting. And good for you about the ownership, because I hear many enterprises out there are really struggling with that. And you do it based on accounts, from what I understood, but do you do it also based on tags?
Yep, it just depends on where they are in the business. So, like I said, it's a company of companies. We've acquired certain organizations that are much more mature in their tagging coverage. And then others that are, we still try to define the standard process that we can overlay on top of that. So that's usually at the account level.
Cool. And I want to get to something you said earlier. You said that the biggest opportunity is with rate optimization. Now, we talked about commitments. I wonder if when you say like rate optimization, you also mean negotiating with the cloud vendors and the opportunity there to reduce costs.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's huge, and I think this is something that's really underserved in a lot of FinOps materials, probably due to the sensitivity of contract negotiations and the fact that you can't share your discounts publicly. That's definitely controlled by the cloud provider. But there are definitely strategies that, and um, I think this is where more money is left on the table that people don't know about than anywhere else. You think with a pen stroke, you can save more than any of your optimization efforts. And folks aren't giving this the proper due diligence it deserves. This is, and I probably know probably a couple of things here. So, um, for those who are in this space, for your listeners that are in this space or who have thought of venturing into this space, uh, I would definitely tell you start early because I get people that have asked me questions over LinkedIn or just through my network. They'll be like in some of these public events, you're talking about it, and I'm like, hey, how long until you're looking to either rewrite your EDP or PPA or start a new one? And they're like, oh, it's coming up next month. Well, then that's a real challenge. This is a really complex topic. It involves a lot of stakeholders. It takes a lot of back and forth, a lot of analysis, legal review, you name it. So when you're thinking about this, I wish people would be out there like 6 to 8 months in advance. Consider the provider's timing too. That actually works in your favor. So if you don't even have one and you're thinking about getting, a better discount, maybe you're moving from a managed provider, like an MSP, to being on your own. Think about the motivations for the account team at the cloud provider. Those salespeople want to make numbers. They want to meet it, before year end. So like or quarter end. So just being able to set your schedule up and set yourself up for success by getting there early, I think it's going to be huge. If you don't mind, I could share more. A lot of things are just kind of coming at me.
I would love it to share as many tips as you have. What we're here for.
Yeah, yeah. The other one I would say is assess your scale and definitely feel free to leverage your network or partners or the teams in your company that are going to be able to really add to this. Um, if you're like an enterprise class customer, you're a large spend customer with any single cloud provider. You shouldn't be going at it alone. There is People probably within your own organization, procurement, vendor management, finance, engineering. The deal potential is just way too large to just walk away or to be understaffed. So if you don't have resources at the ready for that, or they don't know what they're doing, and you're all kind of coming together and not sure how to address this, there are specialists out there. There are consultancies. There's Duckbill, Bain, Deloitte, Crayon. I'm missing many, but there are consulting organizations who focus solely on this effort, and definitely feel free to reach out to them and scale your team. And then, and I'm trying to give answers that aren't commonly things you could look up. Like you could probably just Google what should I do in a vendor negotiation with a cloud provider. Um, but other ones that I would think are a little bit more on the secret sauce side of things would be, think of the partnership. It is not just you asking for a discount, it's mutually beneficial. What's in it for the cloud provider to give you even more of a discount? And you'll often find that their first offer is very competitive. But there's still areas where you can negotiate, or you can sweeten the pot and you can give a little so that you can get more back. And so that might be things like being a referenceable customer, or maybe you can provide a case study. What else? You can also, they could use your company logo. You can migrate that additional workload to become an all-in customer, or maybe you have a data center that you need to migrate to cloud and haven't even landed on a provider for that yet. It's several years out in the future before your lease in your data center expires. Talk to your account team about that, because that can be worked into a year two, year three deal of your multi-year agreement. These are things that they want to earn your business. They want your business, and they want to make sure they know about your landscape. So it's really a partnership, and you just have to be willing to give some information about what your plans are, and in turn, they can work that in and make that a mutually beneficial thing. The last part I would just add that I don't think is, it's kind of common sense. I think it's good for any negotiation, but you can't get it if you don't ask for it. Nothing is really off limits in these discussions, and the worst you can be told is no. So if you think that if this isn't good enough, or I wish I could get in a specific rate discount on this service, or I want to get it just in this region, or I want to lower my commitment because I'm planning on doing a giant optimization thing, or I don't want to talk about graviton, whatever it is you want to get in your environment, you just have to ask.
Yes. It never hurts to ask for anything, by the way, as a general advice for life.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me because I hear people talk in these conversations about, well, we only get so many at bats, we only can ask for so many things. I'm like, no, ask for them all. Like, just make a list, put them all out there, see what sticks.
Absolutely, 100%. And in the end, this sounds like you really need to understand the incentives of the cloud providers. Like they're incentivized to move data centers to the cloud. So if you can tell them, okay, I'm going to pay less, but I'm going to move some to the cloud, it goes with their incentives. And they also have by the way, a lot of programs and plans that allow them to give discounts if something happens. Okay. If you give them logo rights, if you give them a case study, if you're doing a migration. So it's really understanding what incentivize the account managers, the cloud providers, and work out of that.
Absolutely.
Cool. And wow, it's already getting close to the end, but I have to ask another question, and that's around culture, because we start with culture and the fact that you understood that FinOps is all about culture. And I'm curious how you drive culture across Cisco.
Yeah, it's a great question. Culture is the universal question. Everyone listening has a culture in their organization, and at Cisco, I mean, it's everything. It's huge in the FinOps world. It's huge in Cisco. Um, I've seen folks try to run FinOps in just isolation, and it never goes well. It's just too multidisciplinary to be run in silos. But when you can detect that in an organization like Cisco, that you've got that one person trying to run FinOps, or even just seems to be a little more sensitive to costs. What I see there is an opportunity. That becomes part of the spoke and the hub and spoke model. As a central FinOps team, how can I better serve them to help them? That's probably the biggest opportunities at scale within Cisco has been around those individual practitioners of FinOps and helping them, enabling them, and also it's not just giving them the tools to succeed and the best practices and the training. It's also about evangelizing them, putting them on a pedestal, and helping. And this is probably the most important: making sure everyone I sees their value. Because I see these people with remits of tens or hundreds of millions of dollars overall, and they have a team of three, a team of two, and that becomes really challenging to say, hey, like you're just completely taxed with all of the reactive work of FinOps, and we need to move you into a more proactive space, but we need you to have a team of like five or six. So in that regard, like resourcing has been huge, and being able to make sure we identify the values so that we can get them those resources to show the ROI of investing a headcount. That's been huge for us. um, and then the other part within an organization like Cisco, I've noticed is that we're taking things in a very ivory tower perspective, and this is something that I think we're evolving from. We've in many of our business units we have evolved from that, but they take it in a very ivory tower perspective, and what I mean by that is a very academic or textbook approach. They go inform, then they optimize, and they operate, and then that cycle just goes on. Um, they're not taking the specific context and culture of that business unit they're operating in into account. And, and I think you had colleague of mine say this numerous times, and I couldn't agree more. You really need to meet the business where they're at. So what you have to do is you have to find the value for the situation to them. So for us, overall, governance has been critical. We were doing great at optimizing, but by the time we worked through a campaign, there was more of the same. It was like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, if you've ever heard that term. Once we finished, we had to start all over again. And so we pivoted. We solved that problem. We implemented more governance, and it's more about what's needed at that moment that provides the most value, rather than what's next in any logical sequence of FinOps events.
Yeah. No, that's great. These are all great advice. Jarred, thank you for sharing all that. And specifically, your journey is amazing, like from a consultant to actually leading FinOps at Cisco and Cisco scale. That's fascinating how you went through the process and how you took the things you learned on your first role and implement throughout your career. So that's really awesome. But you won't leave us before you will tell us more about yourself.
So I think one of the things that anyone who knows me knows that I like to add a lot of levity to the conversation. I think FinOps can be a very serious conversation. I think a lot of our business conversations, especially when you go meeting to meeting to meeting, can get pretty mundane. So I like to, add a little levity, tell a joke. I'm a little bit sarcastic, a little bit humorous, and I like to insert that a lot. I used to actually be a joke writer in college. I'm a stand-up comedian. I wouldn't say I'm any good at it, but I do some stand-up comedy work in my spare time, and which kind of dovetails into what I would say my other activities are, which would be renovating my house. Which, if you've seen some of the work I've done, it is a comedy act in real time. And so is my tennis game. Although I'm pretty good at it, I like to say I'm good at it. If my shoulder's not acting up, I'm pretty decent at that as well. And then I also like to play ice hockey, so I like to keep active with sports if my body can still keep up.
Nice. That's really, really cool. So do you have a favorite joke? Something that you wrote and you really, really love?
Oh geez, you can't put me on the spot. It's like asking the monkey to dance. I don't know. I don't know. And if I did, I don't know if it would be perfect for a podcast.
Okay, okay, no problem. We can move on. And where do you live today?
I'm in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona.
Nice. Are you originally from Arizona?
No, no, I've grown up in the Northeast, just outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Go Steelers, if you're a fan. Um, and I lived a little bit all over upstate New York for undergrad, and Boston for grad school, Chicago, Seattle, and Denver, and San Francisco before I ended in Phoenix permanently.
Okay, nice. So it gotten more colder and gloomier, and then gradually become hotter and nicer, basically.
Yeah. I can. When I was in consulting, it was live anywhere there's a major airport, and the weather was great, and the cost of living was low, and so I planted roots here. And I've tried to move away a few times, but I keep coming back.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I've been once to Arizona, by the way, for the Grand Canyon, if it counts. But
That counts, absolutely.
yes, yes. But I need to get to Phoenix at one point.
Yeah. Well, this is a popular time of year. A lot of snowbirds. Our temperature just broke the record yesterday. It was 82. That was a high for the historic high for that day in the year.
Oh wow,
This is where a lot of snowbirds come. And then we've got some the Barrett Jackson Auto Show and the Waste Management Open coming up around the corner, where we'll get more. And then we got spring training for the MLB coming up right after that.
nice, nice. So I definitely have to visit Phoenix. And one last thing, Jared, is there a book or a movie you would like to recommend to us?
Hmm. Um, One that I recently read not too long ago. It's been about a year or so, but it's top of mind in the tech context. I don't know if you've heard of the book "Software Wasteland" by Dave McComb. This is a It's a really interesting read because I'm a pragmatic, no nonsense kind of guy. I kind of just tell it like it is. I probably should develop a better filter, but um, it's always irked me that in every company there seems to be this very expensive yet kind of terrible application stack. We're innovators, but we end up with our own tech complexity and shadow IT. But what this book does is it calls all that out. I mean, it talks about the app centric model of IT that isn't helping anyone, and it kind of pivots it into more where the data is, not where the app is. Stop looking at apps, start looking at data. It walks through situations I think we've all seen. There are ones like the single sources of truth, even though there are multiple single sources of truth. And then there's integration projects that never end. And then things like shiny new systems that somehow make everything more tangled, not less. And so I think your listeners would enjoy seeing something that probably represents their own company in Dave McComb's story. It makes it relatable, even if it is maybe a little painful. But I think more specifically, it's not just a rant, which I might do in my own time. I might rant about some of those things, but it lays out a very clean, sane way to think about things. You put shared, well-modeled data in the center, and you let applications, go on top that are thinner, and then you kind of put that all together, and that way it can kind of work as one common stack and not one disparate, kind of like stacking it up and not making it an ecosystem that goes left and right in it. Um, so it gives you the language and the courage to kind of push back on that, and I think we could all benefit to call out things that are broken like that, and that's necessarily a bad thing.
It sounds like a must book for any FinOps practitioner out there.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you don't want to go to the bar and have a drink to drown your sorrows, you read this book and you're like, oh, it's not so bad out there. This guy gets it too.
Absolutely. Cool. Jared, that was fantastic. And I'm sure many people would like to ask you questions and consult with you. What is the best way to reach out?
I think LinkedIn is a really good place to start.
Okay, cool. You heard Jared. Reach out via LinkedIn. Jared, thank you so much for sharing all of these insights and fantastic experience. I really love the tips for negotiation and hear through all your personal journey of going to Cisco and moving from distributed model to more centralized and having something hybrid for optimization. It's been really, really fascinating. So big thank you for joining us today.
Oh, no, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
And I would also like to thank our audience for joining us once again. I'm sure you enjoyed it just as much as I did and learned a lot. Jared, thank you again. This has been another fun, exciting, interesting, fascinating episode of FinOps in Action. Hope to see you all next time. That wraps up another episode of FinOps in Action. Thank you for joining. For show notes and more, please visit finopsinaction.com. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action.